The theory of evolution by natural misconception. Hello, Roddy Bullock here, founder of Creation Reformation and your host for today's video, where we will find out what happens when the misconceptions of evolutionists hit the wall of facts and reality. In today's video, I will recount a recent exchange I had with an evolutionist, and not just any evolutionist. This is a college-level professor of physics and chemistry. We'll see how it went. But first, let me explain that at Creation Reformation, we assert and defend a statement that we call the natural selection paradox, and here it is. Every current species evolved from a first life form solely by cumulative random evolutionary change. Now, if you ponder that statement for a few moments, you will realize that if this is a true statement, it completely destroys the scientific basis for the theory of evolution being a scientific explanation for all current species. And I am maintaining that this must be a true statement if the theory of evolution is true. That is, if evolutionary theory is the true explanation for all current species, then this statement must be true. But this statement cannot be defended scientifically, thus the paradox, the natural selection paradox, because despite natural selection's role in nature, this statement must be true. Now, if you would like a full explanation of how we explain and defend the natural selection paradox, I invite you to go to our YouTube channel and look for a YouTube video entitled The Silver Bullet. In this YouTube video, we give a full, rational, and logical explanation for how we derive the natural selection paradox and why it must be true if the theory of evolution is true. And in fact, it was this video that we had posted on our Facebook page, and we invited evolutionists to challenge our position. And it was in this context that the professor entered the comment section of our Facebook page with this post. Now, this is a long post. I'm not going to read it in its entirety right here. We will go back and look at parts of it in a moment, but you'll notice that he starts out with this, it's unclear why you believe you've revealed a paradox. That's a common statement that we hear from evolutionists. They seem mystified by why we believe we've revealed a paradox. And then, of course, there's well-established blah, blah, blah. And then he talks about straw man. We built a straw man. We even built a second straw man. And then he refers to a red wagon illustration that actually was not in this video. We'll mention it in a few moments. It was in a different video. But we respond to him. We explained the paradox in the video of this post. From all your words in the comment, you missed it, okay? And this is true. This is very common. When we get a comment from an evolutionist, they completely miss our point. They miss our position. They miss our arguments. They misrepresent our position, and they misrepresent our arguments. We also mentioned that the red wagon analogy is actually from a different video. We'll talk about it in a moment, dropping the bomb. And he misses the point on that one also, okay? And then whoever this is manning the controls at Creation Reformation just says bye. Now, the professor says, I watched it. Did you not understand my reply? This person responds, nope, read it again. Let me just explain what's happening here. There's some confusion happening here. This question, did you not understand my reply, is a question that's a little ambiguous, and this person responding didn't quite get it right. And we have a little confusion here, but I promised the professor that I would include a verbatim full exchange, so I have to include this here. In any event, this person responds, we understood your reply. We disagree with you. All the points you made are either wrong or irrelevant or misrepresent our argument, I would add. We defended our argument in the video. We stand by our position as stated in the video. We're not going to rehash it here. And this happens very often. When we get comments from people who are just misrepresenting our arguments or they missed our arguments, we're not going to argue against arguments that are not ours. We're not going to waste time doing that. We stand by what we said in the video. We're not going to rehash it all in the comment section. And then this person rightly suggests that he may want to contact me directly, which he did, and we'll see that in a few moments. And offered that he may want to watch a video that recounts a similar exchange with an evolutionist as this. You can see it here. Here's the URL. It is called The Theory of Evolution by Natural Deception. Okay, let's look at what he said, and let me just show you why we are discounting him as a serious challenger. I'm unclear why you believe you've revealed a paradox. Now, we mentioned that we go to great lengths to explain why we revealed a paradox, and if he doesn't see it, he doesn't see it. Okay, he says your implication is that all changes in the genome are essentially single point. That is not true. That's not even close to true. We never hint that. We never say that. We never imply that. I don't even think about that. Okay, that is simply so far off of anything we said. It is him projecting something he thinks we said onto what we did say. He said we downplay the role of natural selection. That's not true. It is absolutely not true, and anyone is free to watch these videos and see. We explain the role of natural selection. Now, if he believes that's downplaying it, that's a problem with his view of evolution and not our presentation. Okay, he says we have an exaggerated importance of randomness. Again, this is his editorial opinion. Okay, we explain the very fact of randomness and what it does in evolution. This is not controversial. This is evolution 101 stuff. If he believes we're exaggerating it, again, that's his editorialized opinion. It is his. That's a problem with him and not with our presentation. This is one of the most egregious things he says. It's not the most egregious thing, as we'll see in a few moments, but he says that we're trying to make people believe evolution is unlikely because it's hard to imagine how random events, blah, blah, blah. This is absolutely not true, and we go out of our way to make sure that this is not our message, okay? This is called an argument from incredulity in the debate between creationists and evolutionists. It's the idea that if something is too hard to believe, then it has no scientific basis, and for one, that's not true. Gravity's hard to believe, but it clearly has a scientific basis, okay? Force through a distance is a mystery, but it is believed because it has a scientific basis. We are trying to put evolution on the same level with gravity as it often claims to be, and we are asking for a scientific basis for believing that the natural selection paradox can be true and evolutionary theory can be salvaged. That's all we're doing. Our whole video, in fact, the reason this professor responded in our comment section is because we invited people to show us how we are wrong. We are looking for a reason to believe. We're not saying it's hard to imagine. We are trying to get someone to show us a scientific basis that gives us a reason to believe. Okay, anyway, that's what he says. Again, he mentions this red wagon analogy. Let me just mention again right here. This red wagon analogy was actually in a different video. I do encourage you to go watch it. It's a little bit longer, but very thorough. This professor apparently watched it because he knows about this red wagon video, but he completely missed all the points in it. We can't help that. Okay, here is our response again. We've looked at this already. He did respond again with this, and here we are going to see the greatest misconception that this professor is going to try to pass off. He says here, there's some core logical error we've made. Okay, we've assumed evolution acts on a series of individuals rather than a population. That is absolutely false. He did not watch our videos if he wants to say that, but whatever. We have to deal with comments as they come. It falsely assumes that since survivors are not themselves altered by natural selection, no evolutionary change occurs. That is absolutely not what we say, and it's not what we claim. Okay, but here, listen to this statement. But evolution acts on populations, not individuals. I'm going to pause right here for a moment because this is one of the greatest misconceptions passed off as scientific thinking that you will find. And I am surprised that this professor would say that. It is not an intelligent thing to say. It should be an embarrassing thing to say, okay? It would be a true statement if he said natural selection acts on populations, not individuals. That is true. But it is not true that evolution acts on populations, not individuals. And let me explain very simply. Natural selection operates in populations when there are differences between organisms and there is a competition for food, for example, and one of them loses, okay? That is what natural selection does. Natural selection cannot do what it does until there are different organisms in the population. There has to be evolution at the organism level before there can be evolution at the population level. This is not controversial. This is evolution 101. It's an embarrassingly bad misconception that this professor would make, but I believe he even makes it again, okay? But that's what we have to deal with. That's where he is, and it does not bode well for our conversation. Now, you called a logical error. You clearly did not understand the argument of our video. You didn't even know why we call it a paradox, something we explained in the first 5 minutes. But we will humor you. Answer this. Do you agree that all current species descended from a first life form in an unbroken chain of descent? Now, what we're doing here is we already can see that this professor is going to make egregiously bad misconceptions about evolution. But there may be some hope here. We're doing some range finding here to see if there's any common ground we have. And this is the place to start. And he makes this statement. He says most scholars, I don't know if it's most scholars, I don't think so, but he says believe that there was very likely to be a group of first organisms, all right? Now, he's not wrong here. This is a view that's held out there. I'll explain in a minute why I believe it doesn't hold logically, but we don't care what most scholars think. This person over manning the control said, we asked you, do you agree that all current species descended from a first life form in an unbroken chain of descent? And he says, given your limitations, I would have to say no. Now, let me explain why we would disagree with him on this, although this is not a reason to stop our discussion. If evolutionary theory is the true account for all current species, it must have been started by a first life form, and the only explanation for a first life form on Earth is abiogenesis, non-life turning into life. And unless there were several abiogenesis events simultaneously, there is this idea that there was a group of first organisms doesn't hold. And I am saying, and most scholars, the consensus view, the view of all phylogenetic trees, for example, is that in fact there was one abiogenesis event. There was a single first life form from which all current species descended. Now, this point is important because most people do not understand that if evolutionary theory is true, every current species today, all millions of them, billions of them, can trace an unbroken chain of evolutionary descent back to that first life form. Okay, again, we're just trying to see where the professor is on some of these basic evolutionary statements, and we got our answer. Now, this person is maybe going a little too far, saying we're talking about two different versions of evolutionary theory. That's one reason we disagree, and we give our reasons. And then the professor makes a statement we don't completely understand, but that's okay. Sometimes we make comments that we don't understand. Okay, it's fair. But in any event, he says he may contact me directly by email, which is fine. And the person over at Creation Reformation says, good luck. So this was the Facebook comments. All right. Now we're going to switch over to the email comments. But before we do, I want to urge everybody to go to our YouTube channel and look at this video. It's only 17 minutes long. You can put it on 1.5 speed and knock it out quickly. But the professor in Facebook and in this email exchange is reacting to what we said in this video. It will make more sense to you if you go watch the video. But here we go. We're going to move from Facebook now to email comments. And before we do, again, because context is important, what this professor is going to be reacting to in the email exchange is in this silver bullet video. We make 5 propositional statements that we believe are true statements, and if true, they build on each other to get to the natural selection paradox as being logically and rationally true if the theory of evolution is true. And here are those 5 statements. This is a screenshot from around maybe the 14 or 15 minute mark of this video, the silver bullet. Here are our 5 statements. They build on each other, and in this email exchange, the professor is reacting to these 5 statements. Okay, here we go. This is his first email to me. I'm not going to read all this. You can pause it right here and read it if you want. We are going to look at this piece by piece, but I'm not going to read it all right now. I'll just draw your attention to the fact that he says our argument is rooted in misunderstandings of how evolutionary processes actually work. This is always the accusation against us, always, and it always lands flat with evolutionists, as we will see here. Okay. In fact, he ends down here. This argument fails because it relies on fundamental misunderstandings of how evolution operates. Fundamental misunderstandings. All right, we'll see. Okay, I respond now. I respond to the professor. Thank you for your email. I genuinely appreciate all arguments against the natural selection paradox. And I do. I genuinely want people to challenge me because that's the only way I can grow and hone my arguments. In fact, I tell the professor, you may not know, but I've been shown wrong twice by evolutionists in this format. And I've tailored the natural selection paradox in view of valid criticism. So I'm not afraid of being shown wrong. Hit me with your hardest argument. And here he goes. I say, let's start with your first paragraph. So right here, I've reproduced the first paragraph from that long opening email. Okay. Now let's read this. This is remarkable. Stick with me. Okay. I hope you're with me. By this point, over 50% of the people that started this video are gone. The ones that are left, thank you. We're going to get to see some remarkable things here from the professor. Okay. He said this. Again, we read this. The argument it presented is a variation of common critique of evolution, often rooted in misunderstandings, of course. But then he says here, the first claim, okay, that was that first statement in that screenshot I showed from the silver bullet video. The first claim that the only source for new genotypes in the ancestral line of current species is random genetic variation is technically accurate, but oversimplified. This is quite the challenge, right? I mean, he's telling me that I'm right, but I just oversimplified it a bit, okay? And then he goes on with some things here you can read. But here's my point. If the statement is technically accurate, who cares if it's oversimplified? That is the role of teaching. I hope as a professor, he often oversimplifies things for his students because that is sometimes necessary. But oversimplification doesn't make something untrue. He has not said anything except my first statement is actually technically accurate. I'm not going to argue with him about that. In fact, I say down here, but our statement that the only source for new genotypes in the ancestral line of current species is random genetic variation is still entirely correct, right? I mean, he may object to it. His editorializing and opinionations on these things like oversimplified aside, the statement is correct, I'm asking. I say, I'm simply making a factual statement, and your critique has not shown why it's not factual. I mean, that's the whole point of this. I wanted to show me how my statements are wrong. Natural selection is not a source of new genotypes, right? If you disagree, please provide any evolutionary mechanism other than random genetic variation that produces new genotypes in nature. Okay, it gets better, okay? Look at this, the professor. In a broad sense, you are correct. Okay, again, whether it's a broad sense or a narrow sense, I'm simply trying to ascertain, is my first statement correct? Is it true? Is it a true statement? And here he goes again with this egregious misconception Look at this, but remember, populations evolve, not individuals. Watch the video. Again, I'll refer you to Dropping the Bomb on Evolution video. You watch it, hear my arguments, and then decide if the professor is embarrassingly wrong or if I am misguided. Okay, that's all I can do. That's all I can say about this statement. I mean, this is evolution 101. If his students made that, I hope he would fail them. Okay, but here he is making that. We can't help that. We have to deal with the comments as they come in. So he says all this, and I reply again. I'm just keeping my eye on the ball here, right? I'm trying to bring focus to this. I say, but to be clear, our statement that the only source for new genotypes in the ancestral line of current species is random genetic variation is still entirely correct, right? I'm just trying to get him to agree it's correct. I don't care if it's broadly correct or narrowly correct or oversimplified. I just want to know if it's a true statement. And the professor replies, as I said, broadly, you are correct, okay? Now, what we're going to find is something that's very common among evolutionists. They get real dodgy around preciseness in language. This debate hinges on terminology, the right use of terminology, the precise use of terminology, and it will go nowhere when people start playing games with words, and this is what we see all the time, and I suspect that's what's happening here. Why can the professor not simply say, yes, the statement is correct? He says, broadly, you are correct. Well, we're going to take that, okay? I'm not going to play that game. I'm just going to go right here, and he can disagree with me if he likes, but I say thank you. We both agree that my statement 1 is a true statement of fact. And again, I always have to qualify it if evolutionary theory is the correct explanation for all current species, okay? And here is that statement again. We both, he and I, agree that's a true statement. So I'm going to move to his second paragraph, okay? In that long opening email, this was his second paragraph. And again, watch what happens. It's quite remarkable, okay? You can read all this if you want to pause this and read it, but let me just draw your attention. He says the second point, okay, that was my second statement in those 5 propositional statements. He says it's also technically true, but misleading. Again, look at these words. Technically true, but misleading. If it's true, it's true. If it's technically true, it's true. If it's misleading, that's a problem with somebody's idea of reality, not whether the statement is true or not, okay? So you could say, for example, that, let's take it out of this debate. Let's take another hot debate. We could say that you say abortion is killing a baby. That's technically true, but misleading. Well, it's only misleading if you don't want it to be true, okay? But in fact, it's technically true, and he gives his reasons. Look at this, the third and fourth statements. Look, we've gone up now to the 4 of our 5 propositional statements. Of the third and fourth, he said they are both correct, but trivial. Okay, this is remarkable. He's supposed to be showing me how I'm wrong. And so far, all he said is I am absolutely correct. Now, he wants to, editorialize that it's somehow misleading. He can support that if he wants to. But the fact is, my second point is technically true. The third one and fourth statements, he can call them trivial all he wants. I don't care if he thinks they're trivial or not. They're both correct. So I respond. I continue. I say, you say the second statement is technically true. It is factually true, right? If you have an example of natural selection modifying a genotype after it is produced by nature by genetic variation in offspring, please share it. There is no such thing. So he can call it what did he say? I can't even find it up here. But anyway, then I say, you say the third and fourth statements are correct but trivial. Regardless of whether they're trivial or not, they are each factually correct, right? Okay, I'm trying to drive this guy. I mean, he's agreeing with me, but he wants to put all kinds of words around it and pretend like he's not. So here is his response, which is, to me, a tacit admission that, yes, all 4 of my first statements are absolutely 100% factually true and correct. He says, up to the 5th point, you really break new ground. I don't care what he cares. I don't care if he thinks we broke new ground or not. I'm trying to ascertain whether we are making a truth claim or not, okay? So I respond, maybe not. I don't know if we're breaking any new ground or not. I don't care. But in view of your response, is it correct to say that you agree that my statements 1 through 4 are factually correct? If you disagree any of statements 1 through 4 are factually correct, please explain why. I'm giving this guy the opportunity to tell me something, and look at his reply. As I said, those are all reasonably accurate. Okay, now this is a problem because accurate and true are not the same thing, and I'll leave it to you to Google that and find out for yourself why they're not true. The professor is playing word games again. Okay, I am asking him to tell me why any of my statements 1 through 4 are not factually correct. Okay, and he replies they are all reasonably accurate. Okay, I'm not going to settle for that. I'm not going to let him weasel out on that. Okay, so I respond, my statements 1 through 4 are either 100% factually correct and true, or they are not. Please state affirmatively in your next reply if you agree my statements 1 through 4 are each 100% factually correct and true. If you disagree, in your next reply, explain why. All right, now, I'm giving him every chance, right? I want him to say my statements are 100% factually correct and true, or tell me why they are not. He is the one who is challenging me. It's on him to explain to me why he believes my statements are not 100% true and factually correct. And then he does another little dodge here. And in fact, this is somewhat legitimate. I'll give him a break because this is a real issue. It comes up all the time, and it has to do with this term random, okay? This term random gets tricky in evolution debates, and it's mainly because evolutionists, including this professor maybe, get real squirrely around this word random. The word random has a very plain meaning in English, and it's used in evolutionary context routinely, but it is very problematic for the theory. So often people want to argue about what this term random means, and I'm going to give him a break, the professor. It's a legitimate question. What do I mean by random? So I respond with this. I'm not going to read all of this. You can pause the video and see, but I just tell him it's a fair question. I'm using the term random as it's routinely used in evolutionary biology. And here's UC Berkeley has a good page, Understanding Evolution, where they explain what random is. I give an objective definition from the Cambridge English Dictionary. I say both definitions are compatible. I'm using the Cambridge definition as the Berkeley definition tries to bend the meaning to take away from the terms full force, which is true. But I say use either definition in your answer to my question about statements 1 through 4. And then he had asked about this, viral insertions, lateral gene transfer, blah, blah, blah. He wants me to know if I believe they're random. Yes, they are random. They are random. He should know that. They are definitely random. And I say some more things down here. You can read it. But just in case I was wrong, I thought, well, maybe this professor knows something. I Googled each one of these, and the AI answers yes for every one of them. They are random. Okay, so we can dispose of this. You know, somehow there's some secret loophole around the term random that this professor can escape through. Okay, so I say, in view of my use of the term random, please answer my question in the next video. I'm trying to move this forward. I want to get to the real crux of the matter, which is the natural selection paradox. But I have to understand if he agrees or disagrees that the first 4 statements of my 5 propositional statements are true. So I ask again, and I say this again, and I say, please state affirmatively in your next reply if you agree my statements 1 through 4 are each 100% factually correct and true. If you disagree, please explain why. Okay? I think this is fair. The professor explains, I agree that all of these are in fact unpredictable. So he's going back to this random business, which you can read that if you want. Then he says, which means that all of your statements 1 through 4 are accurate. Again, he wants to land on this word accurate, and I'm not going to accept that. That's a weasel word. And you can look it up yourself. Just Google true versus accurate and look what you find, okay? And then he says something about viral insertions. You can read that. I'm going to pass that up because it doesn't change anything about our debate. Okay, I simply reply this. I don't know introductory. I just say, please state affirmatively in your next reply if you agree my statements. Okay, here it is again. Okay, I'm repeating myself, but I'm trying to get this guy to go on the record. Are my statements true and correct or not? And he replies the same statement again. And again, he says, which means all of your statements 1 through 4 are accurate. So we're getting to a point here. I've done this many, many times. I know how evolutionists think and operate. I know that when they realize they are on the wrong side of an argument, they are finding their misconceptions faced with facts and reality. They tend to want to get squirrely around semantics, and this is an example. So I tell the professor one more time, I'm not going to keep doing this. Please state affirmatively in your next reply if you agree my statements 1 through 4 are 100% factually correct and true. If you disagree, please explain why. And then I say this, if you fail to comply, this will be my last reply to you. Okay? If you're not going to tell me whether my statements are 100% factually correct and true or why they are not, then we're done. We're done. I'm not going to keep playing this game. I've done this too long. I wasted too much time, gone down too many roads with obstinate evolutionists. So I say, if you fail to comply, this will be my last reply to you. So we can now see who ended this conversation, because he comes back. What more do you want me to say? I said the statements were accurate. Okay. I did not reply because I will not reply until he is clear on whether he believes my statements 1 through 4 are factually true. And what's happening here, I suspect, I mean, we can say what's going on, okay? Let's just stand back and see what's going on here, okay? Note that we disposed of the professor's arguments for our statements 1 through 4, okay? He came in hot, concluding that our argument fails because it relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of how evolution operates, and we show that's clearly not true. Okay, he's tacitly agreed that statements 1 through 4, in his words, are accurate because he will not bring himself to admit the truth, that they are true and correct. Okay, but we'll never get past that. That's the way evolutionists act, and the professor is no different. But he agrees that he was wrong and we were right about statements 1 through 4, relating precisely to how evolution operates. Okay. So we have neutralized everything he said in his email, okay? He's simply wrong and we are correct. At least that's the way we see it. We're happy to be shown why we are not. But here's the real question. And when we say what's going on right here, what I suspect is going on is that we have dealt with now statements 1 through 4. But do you recall what the 5th statement was? What the professor must see where this is going. He is seeing that his misconceptions indeed have hit the wall of facts and reality, and this is not going to end well. That's what I suspect. I have told the professor that I will let him have the last word, and I will. So when this video is released, I will let him comment in the Facebook section where this all started, and he can provide his rebuttal, and I will not respond unless invited to. But let me just have some conjecture here that this professor saw where this was going. His opposition to our first 4 points were neutralized, and I am exactly right, and he says accurate, but that's that's good enough for our purposes. What was the 5th statement? Well, here again is the screenshot of our 5 statements. You can see 1 through 4 here, and then look at number 5. Lo and behold, what was number 5 again? Number 5 is the natural selection paradox. It's worded a little bit differently. It has this introductory phrase on here, but the meaning is the same. Our first 4 statements are true, 100% absolutely correct. And if you understand those 4 statements to be true and correct, the natural, logical, rational into that is what we call the natural selection paradox. And here it is. This is a statement that must be true if evolutionary theory is true, but it cannot be defended scientifically, and I guess the professor knew that. Now, before we go, let me remind you that we invite evolutionists continually to tell us why this statement, how this statement can be supported as a scientifically true statement. We ask all the time, if this statement must be true, and many evolutionists agree that it's a true statement, our next statement then is, what is the scientific basis for believing it's true? What is the scientific law or principle? In fact, there's a big scientific law that says this cannot be true, and thus it devastates the theory of evolution by natural selection. But I'm asking for, what is the scientific law or principle that makes this true? Now, I want to bring you back to this first introductory comment or email that this professor made to me. Again, we've looked at these paragraphs already. You can read it again if you want to, but I want to draw your attention to one telling thing that this professor said. Again, I hope this person's not teaching your children. He wants to explain, you can read this paragraph here about the 5th claim. This is dealing with the natural selection paradox, okay? He makes a lot of statements here, but then look at this. It does not require a scientific principle or law in order to be accurate, okay? He's, again, focusing on this word accurate for good or for bad. I don't care whether he says accurate, true, or whatever he wants to say. He is making an admission here that the theory of evolution by natural selection must work by magic. It is for sure working by faith, because he is admitting that there's no scientific principle or law required in order for it to be accurate/true. That's an amazing admission, and I'll let him address that if he wants to. And again, at our Facebook page, you can go there and look. Again, it was a June 17th post with the Silver Bullet video. Go down, look for a comment by somebody whose profile says they are a professor or a doctor, somebody from a college of such and such, of professor of chemistry and biology. Go look for it. In any event, here we are. The natural selection paradox stands unrefuted by a professor of chemistry and biology. And I again invite you to go to these videos. There's 2 of them here. Both of them will explain the natural selection paradox in full. I hope you will. And we are at the end here. If I have done things right, on the next screen, you will find a link directly to the Dropping the Bomb on Evolution video. And if you look down here, this little icon down here of our natural selection paradox, you'll see one of those you can click on to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I hope you will. In any event, at this time, I'm going to say thank you, goodbye, and good day.